the test that the whole European Union was going to use. Here's an example of a slide, and I think you can, even as lay people, we can look at this and say the non-GM stomach lining looks different than the GM stomach lining, right? That's on a microscopic slide. So what happened to Poo's diet? Normally, when a scientist does research, the research is written up, it's submitted to a journal, and it's peer-reviewed before it's published and made public. This may take a year or two to get done. He was so concerned that he preferred not waiting. He got permission of the director of the institute with which he was associated. He went public onto a television program and gave the results of his research. What happened? 2 days later, his director came to him, and Dr. Pustai was fired from his job after 35 years of being a research scientist there. He was silenced, and a lawsuit was filed. His data was seized. His 20-member research team was disbanded. His protocol was never implemented. Eventually, he was called to testify before Parliament, and he was vindicated. His position was vindicated, and his results were published in a very prestigious journal called The Lancet. Dr. Pustai has since retired, but his results were one of the very first studies that showed serious concern with these crops. Second cause of problems: the protein produced by the inserted gene may be harmful. The two primary ones that are that have been up to date have been genes that produce herbicide tolerance and genes that produce pesticide protection. I've mentioned the most common one is the one that gave plants invulnerability to Roundup pesticide, or glyphosate was the main ingredient. The second one is a BT gene, and this is one that's used in corn, called BT corn, in which the gene that's transferred in causes every cell in that plant, including the kernels, to generate its own internal pesticide, so that a corn borer that eats these corn cells dies. So the idea was to have the plant internally create its own pesticide. I note down here that there are more coming. The companies are now stacking these genes for various traits into what are called cassettes, and they're transferring those in, and there are literally thousands of field trials going on as we speak. Concerning the BT toxin, the industry claims that it has a history of safe use. Well, it's even used in organic farming, but it's used as a spray on the exterior, and the interior form is different either.
Hi. Sorry, I'm late.
Oh, that's all right. That's okay. And the claim is that this BT gene is destroyed during digestion, and it's not active in mammal cells. Well, think what I said earlier. 10% of what you see here is mammal cells. The rest of it are bacterial cells and other microbes. So we're not worrying about just mammal cells. In reality, people do react to the spray. BT does survive digestion, and mice react to the BT toxin. Here, EPA Scientific Advisory Panel in 2001 says that BT proteins could act as antigens, allergens, and they recommend surveillance and safety studies. In Italy, there have been studies that show that lab animals that ate BT corn suffer multiple immune system responses. In Austria, increased fertility and lower birth weights. And even in Monsanto, this was a study that was released by lawsuit. The Monsanto studies showed that mice had liver and kidney problems, blood pressure problems, allergies, infections, disease, higher blood sugar, and anemia. So if it's doing in lab rats or lab mice, what's happening in us maybe. In India, the BT cotton was a big one, because the cotton borer was one they were trying to handle, and so Monsanto developed BT cotton, and they sold it in big time into India. Laborers in India going even into the fields suffered reactions to the BT cotton plant. A couple of quotes from Indian newspapers. Victims of itching have increased massively, and every single cotton worker from a particular village suffered this particular case. In India, after they harvested the cotton, one common practice was to allow their sheep into the cotton fields to graze on the remaining cotton plants. This they did, and thousands of sheep died after grazing on these cotton plants. What they found was in the animal, they found undigested food. So clearly eating the BT cotton plant caused some serious change within the digestive system of these sheep, which resulted in death. Subsequently, the Indian government has advised farmers not to allow their animals to graze on the BT cotton.
Yes.
Other reports that have come in, cows in Germany have died after eating BT corn. Farmers have reported pigs and cows becoming sterile or having other reproductive problems. Inhaled pollen from BT corn repeatedly causing such things as sneezing, asthma, coughs, cold nosebleeds, vomiting, stomachache, dizziness, and weakness. A lot of these, we may attribute to it's an allergy season, right? Because if you think about it, we live in the heart of corn country and soybean country. And you know darn well that there are times of the year when corn is pollinating. And some of this corn is BT corn. And that pollen goes up in the air, blows everywhere. And where does it go? We inhale it. Every one of these pollen grains has a gene in it that causes that grain to have produced a pesticide that kills the corn borer. So what it does in us, who knows? Enough studies haven't been done. Third reason for problems. The protein may be different than intended. I've already mentioned the transgene itself may mutate or truncate. It could rearrange, it could be read differently, and it could produce multiple proteins. So I said that this may affect our DNA, but it also may affect the process itself, may affect the gene that they are trying to put in there, given the gross nature of the way that it gets in there. To give you a couple of reasons why this is so important and why these minor changes it might seem may not be so minor. A protein to do its job has to be folded. So it's not only a sequence of chemicals, but in three-dimensional space, it has to be folded in a particular way. So the same protein made up of amino acids, the same protein may be folded more than one way. Mad cow disease is a particular disease that results with a given protein that has been misfolded. Same protein is healthy. A misfolded protein can cause mad cow disease, and mad cow may not show up for 10 or 20 years in people. Sickle cell anemia. There is one position in the DNA. If it is a different amino acid that shows up there, it changes the blood cell from being a normal blood cell to being a sickle cell. Okay, it changes from I think it's from valine to cytosine or something. I forget exactly the compound, but it's only the change of one amino acid in a whole string that produces a particular protein. At the bottom there, I've noted that different molecules attach or detach in particular ways to the DNA, so that can cause problems. There was a study done with an altered pea that they transferred a kidney bean cell, or a kidney bean gene into And just the transference of that kidney bean gene, which was to help it resist a certain insect, may have turned these peas deadly. They found that it produced a severely allergic reaction in some of the test animals. So that never came to market. Fourth problem, more and more herbicide residues. So we've talked about the genes themselves and we've got several issues with them. And the science is so crude as far as I'm concerned, it's both reckless and risky. So how about the pesticides? One of the claims is that with GM crops we're going to use less pesticide. Not true. Glyphosate use, you can see there, Roundup Ready soy is up over 200% in 16 years. What does this mean? This means bucks at the bottom line of the corporations that sell not only the seeds, but the pesticides that go with them. Roundup Ready corn's up 54%, Roundup Ready cotton up 206%. At the same time, non-Roundup soy use of herbicide went down. We now have millions of acres in this country infested with Roundup Ready resistant super weeds because we have applied so much of this pesticide, the weeds are themselves becoming invulnerable. Got a couple of graphs here I want to show you. This is from a scientist at MIT that did some what are called correlation studies, and I hasten to tell you that correlation does not necessarily mean cause. Okay, it means that they run together. They correlate. One thing performs similar to something else at the same time. And here is a graph that shows you the use of glyphosate, or Roundup basically, in this country and the incidence of autism.